This video will contain spoilers for... Oh wow, would you look at that? Just Xenoblade 3! You don't need to play any other games to get this one! Granted, it's going to be heavily based on a video about 3 games in the series that I just uploaded, but shut up! Cutting straight to the chase, the joke I'm talking about is the one where Noah is bad at naming things. You might not think this is the subtlest joke in the game, but it gets called back to several more times than you might think, in a couple of surprisingly sweet and wholesome ways. If you don't remember, it's established that Noah is very embarrassed at what he chose to rename Lucky 7 to when he first received it from Riku. This is accentuated by Xenoblade 3 pulling a Xenoblade 2 and never actually telling us what he called it. You might think the name is either Veiled Sword or Truth Singer, as depending on whether or not you've done the weapon upgrade quest, that is what the hero menu will refer to his sword as. However, I don't think those sound like the kind of names a 12-year-old would come up with, and then cringe about later as an 18-year-old, so I think that they're straight up, intentionally as part of the joke, not saying what he named the thing. The joke goes so far as Mio, who literally saw his memories, not actually learning what the name is, and him refusing to tell her, but this isn't even the first time Noah's sword name has come up in a conversation between the two of them. A millennium ago, the Noah and Mio who would go on to become Mobius N and M had a baby boy, and they had a conversation about who would get to name him. Mio asked Noah if he would want to, but he said no, saying that it might be a bad idea, glancing down at his sword when he did so. Yes, our Noah is not the only Noah to have been bad at naming things and cringed at what he called his own sword, to the point that this version of him didn't trust himself to name a child because he thought he would be so bad at it. Now, unfortunately, we never do actually learn this kid's name, and it's in my personal opinion that even if we do get a Founders of the Second City DLC, we will not get to play as him because I believe the founders descended from Noah and Mio were that boy's descendants. However, that doesn't mean that the bloodline of Noah and Mio wasn't part of the founders, as both founders Vandam and Doyle appear to have been descendants of that pair. This means that any non-adopted members of the houses of Vandam and Doyle that we encounter during the main story of the game are actually very distant blood descendants of Noah and Mio, albeit different incarnations of them than the ones we're playing as. For Doyle, that's not a very big deal, but for Vandam, that includes all 3 named members of the house we meet during the main story. So yes, Guernica, Monica, and Gondor are all actually descendants of Noah and Mio. This is primarily just a cute thing to think about. However, it does seem like Noah's ineptitude at naming things, at least in the eyes of his loved ones, did carry down the family line and make it over 1,000 years, because Gondor doesn't like the names Monica comes up with for things, including for herself. Noah had enough self-awareness to realize that he might not be the best at naming things, so when he had a kid, he delegated the job of naming it to the mother. However, we don't really know what Monica's situation when Gondor was born was. We already know that she was only 15 and her husband is dead in the present day, so there's a good chance that he might not have been in a position to be able to name Gondor in the first place, which left a Noah descendant as the one to do so. And while, yeah, Gondor sounds cool, she doesn't like the name for herself, and let's be real, it's not spelled like the Gondor you're probably thinking about, the one that calls for aid, which is kind of sad because I would have loved an absolutely confirmed Lord of the Rings reference in a Xeno game, but maybe we'll get that sometime in the future. We already got the Trails series referencing Xeno up the wazoo, and then also referencing Tolkien up the wazoo, so there's already 2 degrees of separation. Maybe another game will bring it down to 1. But digression aside, the weird thing is, it seems like this Noah naming curse only applies to direct descendants in this line outside of Noah himself, as Gondor is the only one to complain about her name being Gondor. Gondor is the only one to complain about Monica calling the curry she makes Monocurry, so maybe that whole thing gets diluted a bit over time to the point where, after 1,000 years, the only one who cringes at a Noah name is another descendant of Noah. And even then, Noah doesn't complain about Monocurry or Gondor's name, So maybe this entire video was pointless, and Gondor is just being a regular teenage girl cringing at things her mom does because she thinks adults are uncool. This video might not have needed to exist, but it does, and I'm glad you exist too. So thank you for watching, and until next time, this is Luxon, signing off.